when they are joining with a message in the Teams. So talking of today's meeting and today's event, I will. We have the agenda prepared. I will share the screen with you, and actually there we start, but before I do so, I would like to mention few simple rules for this event. And those are, first of all, while not speaking, and you will have, at the very beginning, there will be a presentation, and only then we will have some Q&As, etc. I would kindly ask you to stay on mute so it doesn't create the inconvenience for other listeners to actually follow the content. This is one thing. Another thing is that, let me quickly bring it back. Another thing is that I would recommend you to take your questions while the presentation is ongoing, meaning that write it down somewhere. So it would be great if you prepare for yourself a piece of paper or some digital notepad when you can write the questions down. So later, when we come to Q&A, during the presentation, you may forget some, so it would be handy if you, while there is a presentation, you not, especially if there is the question related to the slide, you know the number of the slide, we can go back and we can discuss. Let's have a look of how our today's agenda look like. And before we do so, I only need one confirmation from you if I am well audible, if you can see my screen, and if you can hear me speaking, if we don't have any technical issues.
All good from my side.
Okay. Good. I then hope and assume that for others it also works. Talking of our agenda, we are just starting, and we would have the very first quick introduction of what the UiPath community is, where we are, what we did this year, what we are planning for the next year. Then we will have a 10 minutes break / Q&A. I will stay for all the breaks. I will stay in. You have a possibility to ask the question to myself. After there is no questions, like there is no Q&A and we still have time, we are free to open any other discussions, so or UiPath related or automation related, or even whatever else you are curious about within this scope and the people who are joining. So, and we have first session about the UiPath Slovak community. The second session will be the longer one, would be about how to grow the automation pipeline. We'll speak about the automation hub. We will speak about how to set up the people awareness sessions, etc. It is more business focused thing. And another one would be purely for developers. We will speak about the Graph API and what the amazing things that this technology allows us. It is not only for Outlook, but for plenty of other Microsoft products. On the end of each session, we will have a Q&A. Afterwards, we have some networking. Take a notes, note your questions, and then feel free to ask on the end. And on that note, actually, I believe that we can start with the first topic. So it is about the Slovak community updates. And here is the agenda for this upcoming 20 minutes. So we will speak about the events and activities we did. We will speak about the plan for the next year. We will discuss the opportunities to collaborate, and also we will discuss MVP. As a disclaimer, also, this first session is designed to be a little bit shorter. So because I know that some people would still, maybe we will have some clarification questions, or people will be still joining. So I think that we will have some room before the main part with the Automation Hub and later Graph API starts. So let's start with the first one. What was happening in this year? First of all, it was quite special year, I think, for everyone globally due to COVID, and majority of things were happening online. We had only one offline event, which was taking place in January. It was taking place in Bratislava, and afterwards we had one event during a summer. For majority, it was a summer holiday, so we had quite lower number of attendees. But afterwards, I was surprised with quite high number of reviews of the recording of the session. And the session, so the first one, UiPath community first meetup was quite generic about the RPA overall, about the UiPath, etc. But then we start to produce more specific subject-dependent events, and the second event was dedicated to reporting. If you didn't attend, there is a recording available. We were discussing Kibana. We were discussing different techniques of like reporting and logging, and we went through different dashboards for robots. So it was quite, I think, interesting for both developers on the end of how you write or create the robot, the way that it logs correct information, as well as on the business end, what dashboards you may expect, not only for processes, but also for robot KPIs, for robot utilization, license utilization, etc. It all was based on Kibana, but the same things can be done in Tableau, in Power BI, in UiPath Insights, etc. Then we are now in our last and third meeting this year. We planned 4. Unfortunately, we achieved only 3 this year, but still, I'm happy to have you today, and I'm happy that you attend this event. We will speak about the automation pipeline, as well as we will speak about the Graph API. We were doing also some other activities. One of the activities we did not manage to extend much in 2020, but it was end of 2019. We started Academic Alliance, UiPath Academic Alliance in Slovak Technical University. And this is something what we aim to continue in 2020, but due to COVID, like universities were also quite frozen, but we will have a next slide dedicated to it, where we definitely want to continue this initiative. For those who doesn't know, what's that about? Academic Alliance is about teaching UiPath and RPA in universities. UiPath provides all the materials for that. We just need the enthusiasts who have some connections or who wants to build those connections in universities and later go and present and teach students. Then the next thing is we started the podcast. It is non-profit initiative, so it is mainly more an enthusiasm of myself and the team, because I'm present in the recordings, but there is also a team behind it, so it is the initiative of the whole team. It is called Automation Impact. You can find it on automationimpact.io, and as UiPath MVP, actually the idea behind is to interview all the other UiPath most valuable professionals and actually capture their knowledge in the areas where they feel they are best at. So like on current slide, you can see we had a discussion about the people awareness, what is quite related. I by purpose, I picked exactly this episode because it is quite related also with the building actually this people awareness and organization using Automation Hub, etc. So we were touching some topics related to our today's event as well. So if you have a free time, I would recommend you to have a look there. And the last one, we run also some non-profit initiatives. Actually, we build robots for non-profit organizations, and one of those is Junior Achievement Slovensko. Junior Achievements is a worldwide organization, and they provide education in schools, type of education I would call it the future skills, like team. They make a focus on team playing things, on leadership, on critical thinking, and the things which are not the regular subjects in the school, but very important in nowadays life. And then talking of the next year of 2021, what we are planning to do is, first of all, what I'd like to bring as an improvement is community events. We schedule them upfront, so it is not like depending on how much workload we have, etc. But we have dates fixed already, and those days may be moved only in case that any larger events would take place on the UiPath side. Then we would move it one or another week back and forth. Then the next thing is universities, and for universities, before I continue, I think that someone is not muted. It creates a little bit background noise, so please check if you are muted. For universities, we would like to run at least one more batch in Slovakia, and I hope, considering how the vaccine topic is evolving now, I hope that we will be able to also execute some activities offline. And also for community events for previous one, we definitely in February would still host the event online, but later we would aim to do activities offline as it was in January. Then we would like to also start some initiatives with universities in Czech Republic and Ukraine. Both are our country neighbors, and in Ukraine we have our active representatives. In Czech Republic we would just do it here from Slovakia just by driving there, or later we would also be happy to find some enthusiasts there. Again, all those activities are non-profit activities, so it is more to build better and stronger community around us. And yeah, the last one, I still plan to continue with the podcast, so there will be more episodes. There are still some episodes pending to publish, so those of you who didn't see it or didn't hear it, like stop by, maybe you find something interesting there. And then, talking of opportunities to collaborate, first of all, for the events, you have a possibility to become a speaker. When designing those events, we don't position ourselves as, like the best experts ever or whatever. This community concept is more about to share experience, and experience is always subjective. So all the things which we will be sharing today about people awareness sessions or the automation hub or graph API, it is just our experience. And many people have a barrier of, okay, I can present only when it is, I don't know, approved by someone or when everyone accepts it, etc. But actually, the barrier of becoming a speaker is not that high. If you have an interesting content to share it, and if you were having some problem or struggle which you solved at some time, and you think that other developers might have it, or same for business. I know that business is facing also many issues in building center of excellence, setting up this people awareness, infrastructure issues, compliance issues, GDPR, many different topics, and it is definitely interesting to share for a community. So we are happy to give the stage also to other people. So feel free to reach out to me, or I can help you also if you decide to build a local chapter in any location where you are present at. I can give you additional information on how to build it, what are the things to consider. I can link you with the right people in UiPath, etc. So any initiative here would be supported. So you can become a speaker. The next one, if you don't feel like you are to become a speaker, at least you can share and invite others. I hope that you will enjoy this session as well as maybe some of you enjoyed the previous ones, and it would help us to grow the community if you just, whenever you see the invite, you share and invite other people as well, so we can grow the community. And the third one, by purpose, I've chosen those pictures. When we go offline, the last event, which was in January, we were hosting here in Bratislava in Automation Hub. It was mainly on our own cost, and since it's non-profit activities, we would be happy if someone can provide us the space for hosting the events. Ideally as fancy as on the left picture, but frankly, any would serve the purpose. Yes, so the pictures are just illustrational, and it depends on how big the event is, etc. If you have some spare office, a meeting room, or if you are in university and you have some hall which we can rent for a lower price, or even maybe we can do it for free, that would be super appreciated, because again, it is a community event and it is about building it together. And then for universities, what are the opportunities? If you have some contacts, and now I'm speaking mainly for Slovakia, we would be happy to get in touch with more universities and to promote this initiative, as well as later when we get in, there is a possibility also to become a lector. So there are all the materials available. We provide pre-training for this, so we can go through materials with you. You can have the all understanding about how to handle the sessions, etc. And then you can also teach in universities. I mentioned it for Slovakia because this contacts and promo is applicable for Slovakia, maybe Ukraine and Czech Republic as well. But those guys who are joining us from other countries, I'm happy to consult you and advise you on how to start similar initiatives also in your cities and countries if you wish. So I can also link you with the right people in UiPath. I can help you with getting the right materials, sharing experience, how it went for us. It is quite nice and contributing thing to society and to younger generation as well. And then non-profit organizations, the concept is very simple. We are reaching out to we as Ective, we are services company, so our main profit is generated based on providing the RPA services, nor it is management consulting like Center of Excellence Enablement or delivery itself. But part of our profit we dedicate for such a non-profit activities where we develop actually some robots for free, and we were developing, for example, for this junior achievements organization, we were developing some robots for them which help them in their daily routine. So if you have some spare time, or if you wish to support any of those initiatives, you can develop some robots for free, maybe for gaining experience, etc. But it is mainly you can support some organization with development of robots, and actually for you it is gain of experience, and for some NGOs, not all of them can afford it. It may be a nice support and nice contribution. So this is how we can collaborate. Next thing and last thing I believe in my agenda for this first part is MVP. So I realized that having this discussion at the very beginning, I didn't introduce myself. So my name is Edward Šlepetsky. I am CEO of company Ective, and I am most valuable professional at UiPath. And being one of MVPs, I can share with you from my personal experience what it is like. And if I'm to describe it in one sentence, it is like, imagine working with the whole UiPath as a company in the same office and having a possibility to approach anyone. Yeah, so you can just walk across the office and talk to chief product officer or to some people from marketing team, or some people from community team, or any department. Yeah, so you can really find any person in the company, and if you have some feature suggestions or some other ideas, we had the regular calls with chief product officer in UiPath, etc. So if to describe it in one word, you have a presence in the company even without being an employee, and it feels like being also part of this great family. Yeah, and on the screen I brought also some other advantages which you may get with becoming MVP. Like, I don't know, you get some additional licenses you can play with, you get an access to earlier releases, you get an access to some closed community events and etc. So and I think the list can continue. Yeah, so it is just few of them, and again the goal is not to read from the slide, but more just to point your attention to something like this is also happening. And why I'm bringing this one on, because now the application is open for 2021, and in 2021, the concept will be different. I don't want to have some spoilers here, but I definitely recommend you to follow the website, which is on the title of this slide here on the top, communityevents.uipath.com MVP. There you can find more information. There is some video promo, as well as there you can apply for the initiative. So still, application is open. I think that some of you may receive even email about this already, or few emails, or probably now it is quite loud also on social networks. So I believe that many of you already heard about this, but if not, then I would recommend to visit the website and check it out, because I mean, UiPath needs new heroes and the world needs new heroes, so be one of them. Yeah. Good. This is the first part. Here probably I would even stop sharing for a second, and I'm curious about if there are any questions, if there is anything you want to ask about any of the initiatives, plans for the next year, if you are curious to start something in your location, nor it would be, I don't know, the university initiative or any other initiative. So if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer those. Otherwise, we can take a quick break and get back afterwards. One thing is remember to unmute yourself before talking, because maybe you will be having a long question which we will not hear. Yeah. So are there any questions? Good. I see some people typing. Feel free to unmute yourself and speak as well. Hello? I'm not sure if connection is good enough, but yeah, try to type if it doesn't work with the stating it directly here. while people, I see at least 2 people typing. While people are typing, are there any other question or any question at all? Good. Looks like not so far. Feel free to take break. We will continue. I will be here already around 59 minutes. Actually, I will be here the whole time. So if you have any question, you can drop it in the chat. I will just stop video presenting. And while waiting for those who stay in the call, we can have some conversation. And if you are taking a break, just be back at 5 p.m. CET, or in other words, in 7 minutes, whatever time is on your end. Thank you.
Eduard, it's Pete Foley here in Denver.
Yes, Peter.
Question about your partnership with UiPath. So what's your history with them, and how did you start focusing on that partnership over the other RPA solutions that are out there?
Yeah, so I would maybe split this question into two sides, like me personal and a company. Personally, I started not with UiPath. I started with the other software, and since it's a community event, we don't have any obligations to don't mention it or anything. It was Automation Anywhere. I started with Automation Anywhere in around 2015, and then around 2016, it was my first experience with UiPath, and I mean, back then tools were quite comparable and quite the same in terms of like they were offering similar functionalities, but where I found the buy-in from, or where I give my buy-in to UiPath is that like the pace they develop and how fast they develop, and also we have one of the largest projects we have now counts over 160 robots running in production. And processes, so automated processes running in production, and it proven to be quite stable. So it is not only for developing the POCs, what is quite often in consulting business where I came from, that you can build a POC with any tool actually, but for me the buy-in was when I saw the larger COEs running on UiPath, and it is combination of support, combination of how fast they develop, etc. So we as a company, we decided to go only with the UiPath. So Ective is delivering the services only in UiPath. Plus, of course, we build around now the ecosystem for intelligent automation, like document understanding, etc., where you acquire also other tools and OCR engines, etc. But as a company, when it comes to RPA, we provide the services only in RPA. And from personal, I think that I was, I don't know, lucky or not lucky, but it was just a part of my job back in Accenture, where my background was. I was comparing different tools, and this is the one which I personally liked. Yeah, it is not necessarily the advertisement of the tool, despite the fact that all the community event is around the UiPath. But my main argument why we use UiPath is that I've seen it working in large scale projects, and I'm confident that we can deliver it because we were making it for that customer. Peter, let me know if I answer your question or if you have any additional one.
No, that was great. Thank you.
Thank you. We are still 2 minutes to go. So in 2 minutes, we will start the main part for the first topic. It is how to grow automation pipeline. We will touch automation hub topic. We would a little bit touch also the citizen developer topic. And again, I would like to encourage you to write the questions while the presentation is taking place, because then when it comes to Q&A, sometimes we tend to forget them. Yeah. So 2 more minutes to go and then we start. Thank you. If there are any other questions for now, feel free to drop them on the chat or just unmute yourself and ask. All right, so less than 1 minute to go. Let's wait and see if anyone else to join, and then we will start the first main topic. Then we will again have Q&A and networking session, and then we will proceed with the Graph API. And it is a time, so I believe we can start. One more thing I would like to ask you is during this, there will be a presentation, and what I would like to ask you is also, please take a notes on what was different in your organization. Yeah, I'm curious again, as I said in the very beginning, for those who joined later, that we share subjective experience. So there is no the best approach ever or something like that. We just share how we did it with our customers, in our companies, and in etc. So I'm really curious how our approach deviates from your approach. For now, I will switch to presentation and we continue. So the topic for today is main topic. The first main topic for business is how to grow automation pipeline. And we will start with definition of people awareness, because pipeline starts with people. I used to have a slide with 2 P's on the slide, like P and P, and it is like people, and then it comes with the pipeline. So I tried to find some definition. I didn't really find it, so I've written how I understand it. And in my understanding, the RPA People Awareness is a company-wide communication across all departments, verticals, to achieve following goals. And the goals are, first of all, to communicate what. So what RPA is, what it is about, and quite often it is also important to explain what it is not. Then the next one is to explain how it will be delivered, how it will be executed, how it will affect every employee or when it comes, and how I can join, how I can contribute. Yes, so how people can participate the initiative. And the last one is understanding of who. So who is responsible for this initiative, who is in charge of it, who to contact if there are any ideas, who to ask help from, etc. So who are the people behind it? And there are these 3 questions of what, how, and who, answering which should result in later the pipeline forming, and maybe before even pipeline forming, the growing and increase of people engagement in initiative. Yes, so because we used to observe, even now in 2020, we still observe that people quite often are concerned about robots are taking their jobs or something like that. And I mean, quite often it is the topic which is not broad, yeah, because they try to put like management and also all the RPA vendors that they try to put how great the quality improvements are, how fancy the efficiency is, etc. But there is also this big concern on the people side about like, will I be replaced or not by a robot? And all those things need to be addressed before, not while, but before you start the automate processes. So this is about the people awareness. And then here are some arguments of why you need it. First of all, what I already communicated, like to remove this concern of being afraid that robot would replace a human being, and this is the very important on a management side to communicate why company is doing it. Yeah, and it is happening in different countries. Back in the past there was a idea that RPA would be successful only in countries with a higher standard, where there are higher salaries, where there would be an aim to replace those positions, etc. But this is not the case. I think that this is applicable everywhere, and main goal is not to replace employees, but more make them focus on more interesting things, and maybe sharing some experience here. Yeah, not just this formal and fancy words about it. Okay, you will be able to focus on more meaningful things, etc. But you will not be fired. What I liked in one company, it was in Asia. There was it was Malaysia, in Kuala Lumpur. They had a pool of people whose job were automated. So even if your position was fully automated, like 100%, not 20, not 50, but 100% automated, you were still getting a salary. You were going to a pool, and in this pool, people were first upskilling. So they were learning new skills. They could get the Excel training or even RPA training, or they could get some soft skills training, etc. They were upskilling. And the second thing is, they were applying for internal hiring, because in larger organizations, and those of you who comes from corporates, you can check with your HR that every month there is a given number of people who are leaving the company and coming in. So the only effect which it took in that company was that the hirings was always prioritized from this pool, but not from outside. And only then, if they don't find the right skill set in the pool, they were going and getting people outside from the market. So this is about how I saw it as a really nice practices, how to address those things and explain people what will happen even if my job is automated 100%. But in majority of the cases, we automate some part of work, and then employee gets the time to focus on really some just different activities, and those activities are or still job related, like the previous task related, or it can be improvement related. So quite often people are executing the same processes for years, but don't have a time to think about how it could run better. So they may participate some continuous improvement initiatives, or work together with business analysts to help them describe other processes, etc. And last, maybe in this point, is to mention that people from business who were executing the process before, and usually they have a knowledge not only about the process itself, but also applications involved, yeah, and they have an overview also a bit about what is happening before and after, become later quite good business analysts, or something between subject matter expert and business analyst, to support RPA initiative. So because it is much better than taking someone from external who may have a good overview of the tools, good overview of how to automate or capture the process, but quite often lacks information about how it is set up internally, how the applications are running, how the processes are set up, etc. So there are still many opportunities when your process gets automated. Then the next thing is, people bring new ideas. Yeah, so why to do it is, on the end, best ideas are coming usually not from management, but from end executors, from the SMEs, where usually how we start the RPA Center of Excellences, or these people awareness initiatives, that we see together with management also to see what are the 80-20 processes they believe are good for automation. And surprisingly, very often those processes are getting later deprioritized, because when we run the people awareness sessions, we discover much more interesting use cases afterwards. Yeah. And then the third one is that people should know who to approach if something is happening. Yeah, if especially not if there is a new idea. Even if yet they don't have those ideas, tomorrow they may get additional tasks, etc. And it is important that people are aware that in the company there is a team dedicated for automation. And with Priya in the podcast episode, which I have mentioned, we were discussing that it would be great if it would be for the companies who already have automation, it should be the part of employee onboarding to explain that there is a RPA Center of Excellence in the company, and if you are asked to do some manual, repetitive, boring thing, validate with them. Doesn't mean that go immediately to the automation team and they will do it for you, they will automate it. No, but at least go and validate with them, because maybe it is a good use case and maybe it can be automated. Yeah, so awareness about who is doing it. And then I said it is a bonus or maybe something for management here and Center of Excellence leaders. I will ask later how your company is set up in terms of Center of Excellence, if it is centralized or decentralized, federated, or whatever else, this combined approach. Because quite often you start RPA initiative without knowing that there is already something running in another department or country or continent or whatever else. And bringing this people awareness is also important even on IT and infrastructure level or wherever else, is that whenever, for example, what we have for one of our biggest customers is that there is an alignment with IT that sooner or later their smaller departments may also try to start the new initiative of RPA. And when they anyway need to go through IT to request accesses, to request additional licenses, etc. So you need to build good relationship with IT to align that whenever there is a new initiative starting like this, they may directly forward those people or address those people to you as a Center of Excellence lead. And this prevents decentralization of initiative, which can, it is nice or it is okay-ish for the start if like to test some concepts, etc., but it is not scalable if you go decentralized. Yeah, so it is good to start centralized or maybe federated in this combined approach, but definitely not going for a long term with decentralized. Yeah, so you, with setting the right awareness, you may keep an eye also on potential internal competitors in the company, and this is also a thing to consider. Then the next one is talking of people awareness. I would split it, and I split it here on the slide into two categories. So one is initial and the other one is continuous. So initial is meant for the first time people heard about the RPA, and the initiative is just starting in a company. And there we first of all explain what is RPA, what are the main benefits, functionalities, etc. Then it is very important to address why organization is doing it. So, and here it is not from expert point of view explain how nice it is, etc., but from people, from management to who people trust, need to communicate why organization is doing it and what is the visionary things behind, like if what will be happening actually when positions getting automated and what will be happening with the person, etc. So they trust initiative and they collaborate, because I heard quite many also negative experiences, and I'm also curious if there were some in your organizations where, for example, SMEs don't want to share or people don't submit ideas because they are afraid of having processes automated. Yeah, so, and this is very important on the management side to communicate why RPA is happening in the company, what's the goal of it. Then, yeah, so this is actually what I just described, like this topic should be specifically communicated, like what will happen if, yeah. Then the next one, we explain what robots can do, and quite often it is also important to explain what robots can't do, yeah? So we still try to explain that these are the digital workforce, that it lives in your PC, it still can't make you a coffee, it still can't pick up the phone, and many other activities. So we explain both. We not only focus on all the fancy things we can do, but we tell people upfront to avoid also some additional unnecessary maybe ideas or unnecessary initiatives. We explain what robots can do. And then when we are explaining it, there is a saying that like it is better once to see than 100 times to hear about this. Yeah, so we show some videos from, if it is for a new customer, we show the videos from different projects or some generic videos which you can get also on UiPath site, etc. So that's about to show how the robot executes the process. And then the next thing is, while we are showing and while we are explaining what robot can do and can't do, we are showing the video, etc. We trigger people to say that, okay, now you've seen what it can do. You've seen a sample. You have an explanation why, etc. And you definitely have an idea of your first robot that could work with you, like in your processes. And we then ask people to think about the first process they would like to automate, and here we immediately use Automation Hub. I would later explain, but within the first initial session, we explain all these questions which are on the left side of my screen, and then we immediately start with submitting the first ideas into Automation Hub, and we will get there. The second category of the communication is continuous, and continuous means that once you already do this initial people awareness, after some time people would still submit first few ideas, but it is not the whole pipeline, and you still don't have an overview about the whole pipeline. So you need continuously to remind about yourself and continuously run those sessions. And how you can do it is, first of all, quite often we set up also the newsletter where we communicate the regular updates about how the project goes. We share some videos of how the process A or B was automated. We communicate what those first robots are in different ways. Those are also presentations to management, to board, to end users, to SMEs. We share success stories. And quite interesting is also, we run, maybe before I get to awards and competitions, we still run the regular awareness sessions where we have a meeting as similar concept as initial one, but we skip some parts like what is RPA, etc., and focus more on how the teams can benefit from it. And later, for the more mature organizations, we also speak about what is, for example, AI and what are the aspects of AI, because AI itself is just the group of different technologies. So we explain each, and we try to bring the relevant use cases as a chatbots or NLP or document understanding, etc., to show the samples for relevant stakeholders to explain how it can be used. Then the last one, it depends on company culture, but sometimes it works quite well with the awards and competitions, where and there are different approaches. There are approaches when they try to identify the one only winner or top 3, top 5 winners, or there is the other approach where company as appreciation gives some small gift to every person who submits some idea which pass the basic validation. So both approaches are there. We don't comment on which is right or which is wrong. It only depends on organization, and culture. But giving a sample of both. So the sample of awards and competitions, usually you can give employees who submit the best ideas in terms of, depends of what goal is, or saving or quality. They can get, I don't know, tablets, iPhones, or additional vacation days, or some financial benefits. And for more generic gifts, they usually get something like USB keys or some funny cup with robot on it, robot logo on it, etc. So you can have combination of both, or you can decide on one or another. But we are speaking about how to motivate the end users. There is also the other aspect of it when we discuss of how to motivate management. And usually, if you run it on as a center of excellence, and if you run it as a central initiative, probably you have internal charging implemented, intercompany charging. Yes. So sooner or later, other departments are to pay you for the automation work you do. Yeah, and to motivate management to submit more ideas, and also them to engage their people to submit your ideas, what we used to offer is that first year, like all the automations which are implemented in the first year would go for free. Yeah, and departments would not need to pay for it. And this is the big motivation then for management to submit those ideas as well. So this is about two types of people awareness session, and then we are getting to our automation hub itself. And talking of automation hub, as you can see on the screen, we have different features of it. We have opportunity identifier, return of investment calculator, and even you can manage the community there, give budgets, and many different things. But since our today's focus is mainly about growing the pipeline, we would focus only on the first part of it, which is opportunity identifier. And I would share again our subjective experience and knowledge of how we use it and how we run it. So as you may recognize, for those of you who used Automation Hub, there are two types of idea. There is a idea, it is called share an idea or share a COE driven idea. Back in the past, it was submit, I think it was user idea or employee driven idea and COE driven idea. So they just rename it, but actually the same thing. So we will discuss the difference between both types and how we use both. And let's start with a simple one. And I start with showing you a video of how easy it is to submit the simple idea. And before I go there, I will go back to the previous slide when I was saying about this initial people awareness session. When we go through all these items of what is RPA, etc., and when we say name your first robot, we send a link to everyone who is participating in the session, and we ask them to do it directly in Automation Hub, the way that we ask one or another person to present the screen, and we do it together with that person, and all the other people are submitting their idea. And on the screen, you can see I always point attention to this very first thing on the title is question 1 of 9. So answering 9 simple questions, you can get your idea submitted. Yeah, and you start with some description of the process, then you give it a name, and there is the third part, which is still kind of less interactive. You need to choose the department you are submitting it for, and all the rest is very interactive. You just have the scale of from very good to very bad in different criteria, and you can just read through even without providing the comments, and just with simple visual explanations, you can go and define the criteria. And here maybe I would point your attention to the next question there. It is about the attachments. While submitting the idea, people already can bring their job aids or work instructions, or however you call it, and attach it to the idea itself. So when evaluating, you have a more background to see what process to give a priority to. Yeah. Then the next thing after you attach the documentation, you only need to provide the name of approver, if I'm not mistaken, and that's it. So in this case, I click I don't know, but there is in a drop-down, you can search for your supervisor, you submit this idea to him or her, and then later it is being reviewed. So this is how we use the simple idea. I mean, this shows how easy it is to submit it, and I will explain you what are the main advantages and disadvantages of it. So actually, I forgot to swap the consent pros. So it is opposite. The pros of the simple idea is that it is very easy to populate. It is quick to populate as well, so it doesn't take much of time, and it is good for mass collecting. And let me maybe stay a little bit with mass collecting and explain what it is about. So this Mass collecting is when you want to submit you want to get many ideas from people, which doesn't need to be evaluated on the very first stage, but can be evaluated later when you don't focus on quality at that point, but you focus only on quantity, and later you follow up with all the ideas to identify the strong ones. Yeah. So it is about the mass collecting, and then any user can do it without additional preparation. So as I've shown it on the video, you had a possibility to see that there are only 9 questions, and out of 9 questions, for 3 or 4 you need to provide like written feedback, and for the rest you can just select in this kind of bar from easy to hard, or from I don't know, digital, non-digital, etc. You can define how suitable the process is for automation. So it is very easy, but on the same time it has some cons now, which we'll get to. So the last one is no preparation needed. And then talking of cons or disadvantages of the process, it provides limited information about the process. As you could see, we did not provide any information about how what is the potential time saving, or what are the other concerns which management may have about this process, etc. And then additional follow-up needed. So after you submit the idea, you have a list of those ideas appearing in Automation Hub with evaluation of potential automation, but not saving. So you don't know, idea may be great in terms of possibility to automate. So it is digital input, there are no changes in the process, 1 or 2 applications are used, not many scenarios, very suitable for automation, but maybe saving is very low. So maybe it is not that interesting for organization to automate it, but you will not see it there. So the point is that you need to have additional follow-up with people, and this is disadvantage, because after this mass collecting, which I mentioned in pros, later you still have much more effort to follow up with all those ideas. And last one, in terms of disadvantages, is you cannot prioritize ideas out of the box. You still need to do the second wave, and only after the second wave you are able to understand the full picture about the process, and only then you can prioritize. Then we can speak about the COE-driven idea and what is the difference. And here is the second video. Before I start the video, I would like to explain from our perspective what it is and how we use it. So first of all, it is much more complex in terms of there are much more fields. Some of the fields are quite automation specific. User needs to have a good overview of the process. It needs quite often be also reviewed by process owner or supervisor of the person, because there are financial data involved as well, etc. So the person needs to have a better overview about the process itself and automation initiative. Yeah, and we can go through some of the fields there. So I'll be stopping the video when it is relevant. So name and description, I think more or less the same. Business area is also the same. But then we start with the first 2 questions, which are, I would say, more specific to the COE-driven, and this is the pain points and negative impact. Yeah, so then people need to provide more information about what they're trying to solve with this, as well as what is the main goal. If it is cost or quality or productivity or whatever else. Yeah, so they need to define what is the driver of the initiative. And then the next thing is they need to have also an overview if processes to change in upcoming 6 months. And here the only difference is to the previous simple idea is that here it is split on the process changes and application changes. Yeah? Then the next one, which we are missing a lot in a simple submission, is the providing the details about potential saving, and it is combined of two parameters. One is like standard working hours and days, etc. So how many days and hours regular employee works, and another one about the process. So how much time is dedicated out of this working time for process execution. Yeah, and these numbers you don't get in a simple idea, but only get it in the COE-driven. So in case, maybe I will stop here and explain, in case that you use a simple idea at the very beginning to populate your pipeline, you would need someone, maybe your business analyst or process owner on the business side, to go and populate this information. And if we are speaking about the process owners, they would need to receive some training upfront also how to do so. Yeah. So then There are some other criteria about like error rates, etc. Also, process audits, which usually executors, the people who execute the process, don't know about, but management knows about. Yeah. So how much effort it takes to audit the process afterwards, and if it is a sample auditing or 100% auditing, like full auditing, etc. Then we provide some additional information, but I would like to point your attention to one quite interesting thing, which is the customization of the fields. What you can do here and can't do on a simple idea, you can also customize the fields. I will show you in a second. So as you could see previously, I was populating some cost information, and then it also can provide you the calculation based on how many FTEs involved, how much money you save automating this initiative. Yeah, and then last thing which I wanted to show is this additional information here where you can define your questions upfront. I will have a separate slide also for this one, where this automation hub is still quite at the first generic tool, but it allows some customization when it comes to your company specific information. Yeah, maybe your main driver of RPA is not necessarily time saving or quality. Maybe there are some other aspects like compliance or customer satisfaction, and you can actually define those questions there. So this is how the COE driven idea look like. And from my perspective, it is a bit less, I would say, user friendly. You don't have anymore those fancy pictures, and you have more kind of expert knowledge to be put in, and then on the end you get more information out of it. So let's go through again my interesting slide with mixed meanings. So we would start with pros. I just forget to swap it. First of all, CA-driven idea provides detailed overview of the process. So you have much more understanding about what applications involved, what is the potential saving. And the second one related with that is that you can directly prioritize the process. You can directly compare two processes and say from all the aspects which one is to be automated first. And third one is there is a possibility of customization. So we will speak about this on the next slide, but this is something what is possible for COE driven, but it is not possible for idea or back in the past for this employee driven idea. Yeah. And then some disadvantages of this COE driven idea. So first of all, it requires user to know the tool. It is not like you just send a link and say submit it and that's it, because there are more questions, some questions are more complex, etc. And it requires user to know how to navigate in the system itself. The next thing is it requires additional preparation because you need to submit documents, you need to know this financial data and many other aspects. So it requires more time to prepare. What is the next thing? Like it takes time. But on the end, how it pays back is that out of the box, you can have something like I have on the screen, this graph, when it can automatically prioritize for you the ideas. There is also a list of ideas prioritized, and it gives you the ranking from best one to the least promising, I would say. This is quite simple and small one I created before for demo purposes, because unfortunately we cannot show our customers one. But after submitting COE-driven idea, you can directly have already this graph populated, and you can easily understand what process to start with. And it is combination of saving and complexity mainly, plus some other benefits if you define it in the custom questions. And then talking of customizations, I like this part a lot because I saw in many companies, especially for those where initiatives started earlier, you have they have kind of idea assessment tools. It may be in Excel, it may be in Microsoft Forms, it may be in any other Google Forms or whatever, but they have already some scoring system which helps them to differentiate one idea from another. And what is good about this is that you can put all these questions into a tool and later just copy paste, because you can still export the information about the ideas, etc. So there is a possibility to very easy migrate this data to the tool which is used. And you can make this questions also required, so meaning that it would not be possible to submit an idea without without answering this question. And here I'm just showing how you can create your question. So you give a question title itself, or you mentioned the question, but then back before, I will show maybe on some sample. You've seen in previous video, there was the small question mark next to the question. I will go back and show it again, or maybe let's do it now. When going through COE driven, there are those question marks, which I was clicking here and there. So you can provide also this description for a user. So when they don't know what the question is about, they can click there or hover there, and they can see what is the hint you left for a user. So this is about the customization, and let me go back to see the idea submission, or sorry, the additional question creation. You may have a question enable question as a required. And talking of enable question, what it is, you may have more questions predefined, but depending for who you run this session, you may enable and disable them. So meaning that if you, for different departments, you have department-specific questions, you can easily, again, enable and disable them. The only important is to don't keep them required, because once you enable them, there is a risk that sooner or later the person, whenever editing the idea, would need to provide this information, even if it is not relevant for specific person. Yeah, and then you see what are the options. You can have also multiple choices or single choices, and you can easily convert there. So what I wanted to show here is that you are not only to use the standard functionality of this automation hub, but you can also be very creative and define as many questions as you like, or as requires by other templates and the tools you use, and then later just easy migrate it from automation hub to the tools you use. Another thing which unfortunately will not be part of this this session today, but what we are doing internally now is we are building the integration between Automation Hub in Azure DevOps when we are tracking the project, and same thing would be applicable for Jira. So if you have some Scrum dashboard when you are tracking your progress of your user stories or your processes, however you call it, you may not want to populate both tools. So we are working now on the integration to ensure that once you update something in Automation Hub, it gets reflected in the DevOps tool, and vice versa. Then next thing I wanted to discuss is the citizen developer and local promoters. So it is very important to have in a company it doesn't necessarily citizen developers. Let's start with local promoters. So quite often when we automate the processes doesn't matter if it's finance, supply chain, any departments, there are some people who are very supportive of those initiatives, and it is very important to turn those people later to or business analysts or citizen developers or some local representatives that can be idea leaders or whatever else, however you call it, the people who will promote this initiative internally, because again, the most trust you get from inside. It is not that you as a external provider, or later if you run it inside the organization, if you come from COE, you say, okay, this is the best thing for you. It works much better when the employees share the experience, say, okay, this is how it helps me, this is how my robot runs, etc. And why I highlight here as citizen developers, and maybe quite important, is also the role of attended automation. Usually in my experience, it brings quite often lower savings. It depends also on the type of the business, but majority of the robots we build are unattended. But disadvantage of unattended robots when it comes to people awareness forming is that no one sees them. So those robots, once the process is automation, it is running on the back end on the server, no one sees the robot, and people see it only if it fails. What is the worst what they can see? Yeah? So once robot doesn't work, they see, but while robot is working, no one sees it. So different thing is with attended automation, because quite often people give names to those robots. So they say it's, I don't know, Robbie or Robert Robert or I don't know, John or whatever. Like they give different names or animal names to it, etc. And they say, okay, while I'm having coffee, my Robocop or whatever is doing the work for me. Yeah, and then there are some discussions starting, the questions starting, etc. As well as citizen developer is even higher level because there are some ideas which will be probably not prioritized in the first wave for automation in department, and maybe they are so small that they will be never prioritized for an intended automation or for larger center of excellence, but those can still be a good fit for citizen developers, which can be defined per department, and those employees can help solve local problems and can help solve some local small tasks which other colleagues are doing without the need to go through all the prioritization and center of excellence robots procedure. Yeah, so it is just, you have a problem, let me solve it, here is the package, and you use it. Yeah, so a very important aspect of building and growing, maybe this is not for the very beginning, but when you grow people awareness, I would recommend to consider citizen developer concept and attended automation, even if your organization runs fully unattended when it comes to RPA, to have an eye on it, not necessarily from saving perspective, but much more from awareness perspective and making RPA more popular among your employees. Then we are getting to the last slide I have prepared for today about the people awareness, and unfortunately I don't have it well automated as it was on original conference when this slide was presented for the first time. But let me quickly walk you through what is this automation flywheel about. So actually, you start with some ideas in COE, how the initial center of excellence starts. You build some people awareness, and then the first ideas are submitted. Then you build the automations, and then you give these automations to employees. And once they use it, and this was the sample with those citizen developers and attended automation, is that they start to promote it and they inspire other automation to be submitted. Yeah, and with the citizen developer, they can even build and solve it on their own, or later build automations for their colleagues. Yeah, and then this whole thing is a continuous cycle. So because once you build more robots, you inspire people more, you trigger more ideas for automation, and on the end, you have again the bigger and bigger pipeline. So what I would encourage you to think about is, depending on in what stage you are, to evaluate your initial people awareness concept, then continuous one. Think about how would you embed Automation Hub in it, or what would be alternatives. I'm curious also to hear your experience if you have some with Automation Hub, etc. And having an eye on citizen developer concept, on concept of local representatives, even if they are not part of Center of Excellence. So that's it for now. I was speaking for 40 minutes. We actually ended 5 minutes ahead. And I'm curious if there are any questions on your end. I would have questions to you. My question would be how your approach is different to what we have presented. But before we go there, I'll be curious, are there any questions? Do you like to know anything more about what was presented? We can go back to any slide and we can discuss it. Any questions from the audience?
Maybe if I may, Edward.
Yeah.
I was following the presentation. I am a bit familiar with the software already, but every time I use it, I struggle to understand what is the difference, or what is this application from UiPath doing better than a SharePoint site. So I don't know if you can comment a bit on some things that maybe this software is doing better. Maybe everything is out of the box or something like that. Or I don't know exactly. Yes, I don't know if you have some comments on this.
Yeah. So talking of Automation Hub, and thank you for asking, Eduardo. So first of all, you need to build this SharePoint thing, right? But I heard quite often that people said, okay, I can build something similar in Google Forms or Microsoft Forms, etc. And they are right. If you have the right knowledge and you consider all the aspects, you may build it. And I have no doubts that like similar things can be built in the tools you mentioned or I mentioned. The thing is that it is, I would say, the consolidation of already existing experience of many organizations which are working with UiPath consolidated in one tool, the way that you have everything needed to run process end to end and to track process end to end. Frankly, I still see a lot of areas of improvement there. So still, for example, I would not give up Azure DevOps also for tracking the progress, etc., because I like the transparency more there, etc. But I think that if you want to start out of the box and you are beginning with this initiative and you are okay to invest into the tool, I think that it can solve many problems for you on one go. This is one thing. And another additional argument here is that with having Automation Hub, you automatically get unlimited licenses for task capture. So it is combination of Automation Hub, but you also get a tool which helps you to later capture and create the PDDs, capture the processes and create PDDs. So this is additional argument that with buying Automation Hub, you don't buy just the tool which you, as you Eduardo mentioned, you can build in SharePoint or whatever, but you can also get these unlimited licenses for task capture, which you can give to all the business analysts, etc. And I saw in the pipeline that in the release plan that there was an idea of synchronizing it with Automation Hub. I'm not sure if the functionality is yet in place, but there is a aim and there is a goal later. Then once you process the item in task capture, it automatically also would submit it with more details about the number of screens, number of interactions you do, and how long it takes directly to Automation Hub through the synchronization.
Yeah, thank you, Eduardo. I am very interested in this because I think the real point on this software is the connectivity that it offers. Of course, we can build the same that we can do automations at some point also through scripting, but I think that if UiPath is offering some out-of-the-box solution, it is good.
Yeah. And Eduardo is big fan of Microsoft, so I know where this question comes from. Yeah, so like definitely you can build it also in other tools, and it is, I mean, it is worth mentioning as well. Yeah, that if you are running this initiative longer, you have the overview of all the aspects to consider. I think that you can recreate something, not necessarily same big, but maybe you even don't need all the functionalities. You can tailor some smaller apps for you which can serve the same purpose or maybe in some areas even better. This is like universal thing, yeah. So it is good in many areas, but at the same time you may have the more specific tools to target each, and it may be better. Good. Any other questions in the round? In case you're asking, don't forget to unmute yourself. If there are no questions, I would be curious how the approach deviates in your organization. So let's maybe speak a little bit about this thing. How those of you who was watching the presentation now, I'm curious, what's your experience? And here, by purpose, we didn't cover only Automation Hub because not everyone has an experience with it, but overall with the building people awareness. So I see some people who were attending our other events, who we know also from social media, etc., who I'm sure that have an experience in this area. I saw some people also unmuting. So please, what is your experience and how it deviates from what presented?
There is a question in the chat as well, Edward.
Yeah. So the question is, can you advise how to promote citizen developer for executives? Your advice on how the citizen development POC can be carried on before going with Automation Hub or without it at all? I'm not sure I understand the second part. So Maybe Vlad can elaborate on the question. So can you state the question, and I'll try to answer both. Vlad, if Vlad is with us, don't forget to unmute yourself.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so question is, if the organization don't know if they want to have citizen development inside it, they have like some doubt. So what would you advise for a pilot? Let's say, like, let's promote citizen development in one of the departments or something like that. Or how can we do citizen development in the organization with UiPath, but without using Automation Hub?
Yeah.
On early stages, on early stages or without it at all, but yeah, maybe on early stages.
Yeah,
Thanks.
Got it. Thank you for asking. So first of all, talking of Automation Hub and citizen developer concept, it is completely independent things. So it is why we bring it here together, because both are contributing to building people awareness. But talking of, like, you can use one and another independently, and there is no sequence in which you need to approach those. Talking of citizen developer concept, you say that organization is unsure if they should use it or not. First of all, it is important to understand why to have it, yeah? Because many times I saw our customers are questioning it in terms of saving perspective, and then they may be right, because the citizen developer concept, if we apply it only to I develop the robots for myself, the point is that maybe I automate some task for me which was taking 20 minutes a day or 1 hour a day, etc. But still there is quite low likelihood that I would automate everything for me. And then there are still quite many concerns of how to scale it, how to share it with the other departments, or other, not even departments, but other colleagues, etc. So the first thing is to understand why. And what was for me the additional why, or additional argument of why to have it, is not from saving perspective, but more from idea promotion perspective, that there will be someone walking around speaking about these robots, building some small robots for end users and helping to utilize it better. Yes, from this perspective, it definitely promotes the whole concept of RPA, and it can contribute quite well to the pipeline. So one of the arguments which management is definitely interested in is growing this pipeline, and it definitely contributes to it. So I would say that it is one of the arguments, and the others are, of course, depends on the areas. Again, there might be it is not related to the early stages, and we usually don't start with citizen developer at the very beginning. We run RPA initiative at least for half a year or 1 year with the customer, and only then we start with citizen developer concept, because there are quite many things at the same time to start if you would consider this and Automation Hub, etc. So we build it step by step. But once the pipeline grows and there are people already who would like to try it themselves, and quite often in departments there are people who already were doing some macros, and they start asking questions, can I have a studio on my own? And the rule is quite often that the studio is allowed only for people who are part of Center of Excellence, and it makes perfect sense. Departments are not willing to give people to Center of Excellence, so they still want to keep those people in their departments. And then this is the good compromise, that person remains in the department, can build some robots, and gets the Studio X. So this citizen developer concept is mainly about the Studio X, and I think that this is another thing. And also it can push a little bit the prioritization for. So the argument of the management is that if imagine you have a pipeline, you have many ideas submitted. Doesn't matter if it is through Automation Hub or it is Google Forms, whatever, like simple Excel. Yeah, you have many ideas submitted, and then you have the 5 developers in the team, or 10, name your number, but you have many ideas there, and you are to prioritize what ideas goes first, what ideas go second. You can convince management by having citizen developer concept also, because if your process is not the highest in priority, you may wait for a few months or maybe a year until it gets automated. But if you have a local citizen developer, they may start directly, I don't know, in after 1 month of training or even earlier. The Studio X is very simple. There are a lot of materials on it, and it is the question of even few days to master it, at least on some basic level. I don't know if I answered your question, so let me know if there are any additional questions to this one. But you need to think to short it down is like you need to think of, first of all, why to use it, not and what are the main benefits it can bring, not only the saving, but also in terms of contribution to the pipeline, contribution to prioritization, etc. Good. So we have answer, like Vlad answered in the chat. Any other questions? If not, I would still be curious what deviates in your approach. So I see some people in who I'm sure that already were involved in setting up these people awareness campaigns and sessions, etc. How was it for you? So where your approach deviated, where your approach was the same? Before I was, yeah, Yaroslav?
Yeah, well, maybe I will speak up a bit about this in our company. Originally, the automation COE, that the entire team in our company started with multiple different automation initiatives, not only RPA. And that's why we had to set up one common tool for all of them. So basically, as Eduardo mentioned, SharePoint is giving you majority of these functionalities already, and this was the very first tool we were using, and also it was something what management and non-technical guys were actually familiar with already. So everybody was happy with that, but from my point of view, that the SharePoint with those latest iterations and versions become really robust tool, which was really going slower and slower, and was really changing the play, and we decided to change it to Redmine, which is open source tool, and you can develop any kind of, let's say, formulas over there, and for your basic needs you can really create your own workflows for approving the content itself, showing or throwing some notifications and stuff like that. So basically this is the tool we are currently using, and where we are actually sticking for the future, because apart from the RPA, let's say, needs, it also captures or covers needs for other automation areas, and this is regarding the let's say the tool itself. But regarding the topic you mentioned about how we were really starting with the initiative itself, and if it is good to let's say start with centralized or decentralized approach, it's always really complex in a sense what kind of, let's say, activities or use cases you have in a pipeline. And the very first steps we established into production was to start explaining to each particular site, because our company is really spread around the world, in multiple countries, multiple centers. So we decided to get approach in a way of this decentralized development first, because we have limited resources. We did not have a budget at that time, for the entire team to hire our centralized developers and so on. So we decided to, come to one center, explaining what the RPA is all about, show them use cases, how it can really benefit for their people. And we asked them, to show us some biggest pain points they're really facing these days. And we decided, okay, let's automate this simple task for you as a proof of the concept that, okay, this is really something which can help your center, your team. And from that point of, as soon as they realized, okay, this is really something nice and it really helps us a lot, and they wanted more and more, more use cases to be automated. So we decided, okay, give us some resources on your side. We will give them a knowledge transfer. We will train them. We will teach them how to do that, how to maintain the content and so on. And this is where we actually started building the decentralized audience, of our developers, not our personal developers, but basically developers which were really mentored by us, but were located in different centers and were located under different management. And yeah, the only problem here is that many of these, let's say, as you name them, citizen developers are not that high skilled always. There is plenty of situations where you cannot really identify such free developers for this kind of work. So we decided, okay, if there are some complex use cases and for centers or teams which does not have, let's say, those skilled developers, we have to establish our own centralized team for, let's say, for jumping in this situation. So that's why we actually mixed the original model with the centralized model with centralized model. So we hired some centralized developers which were really jumping in this, let's say, more complex horizontal scalable solutions and use cases which had really biggest impacts and so on. And these smaller pieces were still really up to those centers, up to those teams locally located in these centers to develop it on their own. And basically we are still in the position that we are having this kind of, let's say, mixed version of the deployment and development as well. So yeah,
got it. Quite cool experience. And one thing I also write the question down to don't forget, if you can drop into a chat the name of the tool which you were mentioning, maybe it will be interesting for community members, as well as the only one question I have, if before Eduardo starts with the API part, question would be, how do you deal with this problem of like robot replacing your concerns, or how after the work is automated for the person, what is happening then? Is there any push from change management? Is there the person dedicated to make sure that then FT is released, or is there something, as I explained, for this Malaysian company? How do you deal with that part, or it is outside of scope of your team?
Yeah, well, it depends. Every single year the management is coming with different approach. Yeah, sometimes it's just really releasing those workforce to take another work for other customers, doing the support for more accounts, not only for one account or two accounts, but for more. Sometimes there were initiatives which were really focusing on savings, so basically save as much workforce as possible, but always there was still try to redistribute the workforce to other, let's say, teams, as you mentioned already in the previous presentation. So, and it was not always, let's say, that straightforward. You cannot really Wintel guide to push to some other different work and make him a Unix expert in 2 weeks or 2 months. But yeah, there is. I'm always saying that if you are going to automate it, or put it different way, let me explain it different way. There were plenty, let's say, feedbacks coming from these guys that we are not going to give you any kind of, let's say, ideas, because you are going to fire us and we will lose our job, as you mentioned. That's the standard scare of all people. But we are telling them that if the company actually decides to release your workforce, you will be released no matter what kind of, let's say, activities you are performing. And if the company usually grows up and is really taking new businesses, then it's really just matter of relocating those workforce to the much appropriate work and teams. So.
Got it. Appreciate sharing the experience. And again, if you can drop the name of the tool in the chat, that would be probably helpful for some of our community members, as well as I would be curious to have a look. And again, thanks for sharing. Now I think that we have to start the second part. After the second part, we can still continue discussing this people awareness topic or also the API topic. But now I would hand over to my colleague Eduardo Loma, who will show the integration with Graph API, and how we use it in terms of Outlook and some other applications. So Eduardo, back to you.
Yep. Thank you, Edward. Let me share my screen so you guys can see it. Just a second. Let me know, please, if you can see it already.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Yeah, so as Edward was mentioning, just a brief introduction about myself. My name is Eduardo Loma. I live in Bratislava as well, so I am part of the community in Bratislava. I prepared this presentation because it is something we were developing this year, and I think it is a nice contribution to the community, let's say. Let's see, maybe you are using this already, so the purpose of this presentation as well is to exchange ideas. So in case you are using it already and you have some advice, let us know, because, I mean, as Edward was saying before, the purpose of this community at the end is exchange ideas and grow together. So let us know in case of anything. Apart from that, the presentation doesn't go much in detail on what exactly we are doing with pieces of the code, etc., because mainly we will not have time in 1 hour to do so. So it is just an overview of what were the problems that we were having, how we are solving them. We are showing as well how we are interacting in UiPath with it, and some ideas for some extra plans that we are having. Yeah, so just before we start with this, probably in case, or I don't know if you are already aware of this Microsoft Graph or not, but the whole idea behind this is that previously in the old versions of Office, like Excel, Outlook, etc., everything was running on the desktop every time. So they were desktop applications that they were running locally. But since the newer versions of Office, everything is online as well. So probably you have noticed that you can work on Excel online or PowerPoint online. This is a PowerPoint online, for instance, or as well Outlook online. So so this means that all the information is in the server, and we can actually access it doing so through Microsoft Graph. We can access this data that it is in the server of Microsoft. So it is quite interesting. I didn't know that this existed at the beginning of the year, but later on exploring solutions, it is quite an interesting tool. So Microsoft Graph is basically a combination or a tool that it is made to connect through API calls the Office applications that we are used to have with the Azure servers that Microsoft is having, where the data is stored. So this means that we can access plenty of things, like this is an example of it, that are online for us. Like in this example, I am showing mostly things connected to communication things, mostly Outlook. Like you can see, we can access the calendar, the files, the mail, the notes, etc., without opening Outlook on our client. So this means that even if we don't have Outlook installed in our local machine, we will be able to handle these parts of the mail, let's say. So we will be able to access the calendar, to create appointments, to manage who is attending the presentations. All these kind of things, we can do it. It is not limited to Outlook, actually. We can do it with plenty of things, some of them unexpected things, like one of the latest incorporations to the graph is Teams. So this call is happening in Teams at the moment. And probably you are aware of Teams already, but it is a tool that it is coming to replace Skype. So it is a chat tool that it is now in Graph as well. So this opens as well a new universe of possibilities for this tool, because we can, I mean, they will be incorporating new tools in here. So I think it is quite powerful already. Yeah, so if you see in here, we can access as well the files that are on OneDrive, so it is also used for that. We can access as well SharePoint sites, so we can deal with lists and sites, which I believe sometimes it can be problematic for the RPA community that we need to open and navigate SharePoint sites. So through these API calls, we can deal with that directly without opening even a browser, which is quite interesting to deal with certain situations. And yeah, anyway, just this was just a brief introduction to explain that actually everything or almost anything that we can do with the applications on the desktop, we can do it with Microsoft Graph as well. There are some limitations, of course, especially I think connected to Excel. Probably we cannot do very complicated operations in there because Excel itself is quite a powerful program. But as you see in the example below, with Excel we can deal with charts and presentations that they are claiming that it is complex presentations, etc. But I think it is somehow limited to the whole power of Excel. Yeah, so this is mostly the capacities of Graph overall. I left below a link, so I think this presentation will be shared with you afterwards. So in case you want to investigate what are the capacities of Microsoft Graph with a particular application, let's say with Office, for instance, you can use this link to go in there and find out what you want to do in particular. And the documentation is quite good, so it will explain in detail how to do it. How do you need to make the calls, etc. And it is quite extensive, the documentation that they are providing. Yeah, so once we have a general understanding of what Graph is and what is the capacities, I want to explain you how we started to work with this year. So mostly we had a problem with Outlook, that it was quite a strategic problem for one of our clients because Outlook was taking a lot of time to open and close in the virtual machines that we were utilizing. Sometimes it will take up to 20 minutes to open itself, just to open it, which was quite time consuming. We are quite interested in license utilization at the moment, and our licenses are utilized very efficiently. So 20 minutes every time that Outlook opens, it was too much time. So this was mostly one of the triggers that we had. It was not the only one because we were experiencing as well that some processes where we had users working with Outlook at the same time that the bot was working with Outlook in the same mailbox. It was creating conflicts because we had customers who will get anxious. Let's say that we had a project where we had to automatize the handling of certain emails coming from customers. For instance, getting the invoice number and putting it in SAP or something like that, just to simplify. So the teams that were handling this manually in the past, they were still handling different parts of the other processes. So they were having access to the inbox because the bot would only mind these particular cases. In these cases, very often we have this experience in several processes, actually, not only in one. The people working together with the bot will get answers. So if they will see that there is a message waiting for, let's say, 15 minutes, something like this, they will get nervous and they will handle it themselves. So later on, the bot, who is scheduled to work every 20 minutes, will come 1 minute after the people change the email location, will not find the email, of course, and it will generate plenty of exceptions that later on we will have to analyze, investigate why it is happening like this. Of course, the customers, they will claim that they were not touching any email. It was not a nice situation anyway. So this was as well one trigger for us. So not only the performance of Outlook in the virtual machines, but also the client satisfaction was a trigger for us to analyze different solutions. Also in the past, we were working with VBA scripts, UiPath and SMTP, a combination of them and to work directly on the client. So we will open Outlook. It will take 20 minutes, something like that. We will handle Outlook through a combination of UiPath and scripts. And also it was a good solution. So it was not a bad solution, but it was not a perfect solution because Outlook had a tendency to freeze and the scripts were failing. So it was not a nice solution neither. So this, even if it was not such an important trigger for us as it was the other two, it was also an important exception. And as I was mentioning before, and it is a topic that it is coming more and more to our plate in these days, saving time from investigations for the developers, it is a big priority for us as well. So making all the Outlook processes or the processes that were working with Outlook work more efficiently with less errors. It means less investigation, so our developers can work on new user stories, new robots, and not so much on investigations that at the end they were caused by some user that didn't fully understand how the bot is working, so gets anxious and just works proactively. So this was the main problem that we were having as a trigger for the investigation that we had on Microsoft Graph. And after investigating, we came to understand that Graph was a very nice solution for us because Graph actually comes together with our Office license, so it doesn't involve any extra cost for our clients. They have it already in their license and they can just trigger it in the moment they know that it exists. I think many companies, they don't know that it does exist, so that's why they are not using it. Also, apart from the non-extra cost that Microsoft Graph involves, we were saving time, as I was mentioning before, in virtual machine utilization, not only in virtual machine utilization, but in UiPath license utilization. So we were saving time, saving money for our clients, which of course is always a nice thing to offer. Apart from that, it provides a base for scalability because using the Azure capacities of Microsoft, it means that we are not limited by a number of mailbox, for instance, that Outlook can handle. Like the reason why our Outlook was taking 20 minutes to open and close and deal with it, it was because it has many mail boxes in there. So the more user stories involving Outlook that we will have, the worse it will be the performance of Outlook. In this case, if we are using the server capacities of Azure, we have no limit on the number of mailboxes that we can utilize. We can just increase the number of mailboxes and it will not come with an extra cost in terms of money or in terms of time. And another interesting point that it is helping as well our investigations is that when we are working with Outlook through scripts or through UiPath, we are dealing with emails like a person will do. So based on its name, maybe based on the time when the email is coming, based on the name of a folder, something like this. But if we are working through Microsoft Graph, the emails, the folders, the users, the files, if we are using OneDrive, or the conversations, if we are using Teams, everything has a unique ID. So it is much better to work, or it is much more secure to work this way, because we are always sure which email we are catching, if we are always working with the same email, if we are always working with the same mail folder. So it happens often as well that in processes where the customer is having access to Outlook, the business has a tendency to change folder names. I don't know if you are experiencing the same, but it is a very recurrent issue for us. So if we have a unique ID for each of the folders or each of the emails, it doesn't matter what the business is doing with them, because the ID will remain the same and the operation of the bot will be good anyway. And yeah, and the last point that actually it make us think that Graph is a great solution for our problem is that the teams, the customer, the final customer who is operating in the same Outlook as the bot, it can see that the performance is much faster. So they are not getting proactive, let's say, and moving emails all around or dealing with emails that the bot is supposed to work on, etc. So the customer is much happier. We are avoiding situations where we don't know what is happening. It is never good to have an issue working with Outlook for a final client that is coming complaining because there are too many exceptions, and we need to investigate because we don't know straight away what is it going on. The investigation takes too long, so overall it is not a good client experience. So this solution where the customer is seeing that the things are much faster, where it improves their satisfaction, and not only their satisfaction, but also they tend to trust more the bot because they see that the number of exceptions is being reduced. They understand what is going on as well, even if they don't see it happen, they know they can trust it, and they put more confidence on the bot performance. So they reduce the interactions that they are doing on the bot work. So they are not entering in the bot folders in Outlook. They are not doing anything like this. Yeah, so that's why we believe Graph is a very good solution, replacing the traditional Outlook way of working. I made a few screenshots on two possibilities on how to work with this in UiPath. Because the way how we are triggering this Microsoft Graph is through UiPath. Everything we are doing is triggered in there. So there are two main ways to do it. My way of seeing it. There is on one side, there is under the Go tab, on this new tab that UiPath launched, I think, last year. There is a library that it is allowing us to perform certain activities. So this was originally our first idea as well. Like normally in UiPath, we will find a new library and we will just apply it. I am mentioning in the presentation a few points on it. The positive point that this library has is that it is out of the box. It is maintained by UiPath. If you see, the author is UiPath. So because sometimes in Go there are other developers creating libraries, but in this case it's UiPath directly. But it has some limitations. At least when we were investigating this, we encountered that it is not very customizable because we cannot create many other activities other than the ones that they are presenting to us. This, I believe, it is a temporary issue that they will be implementing new activities, but we didn't want to wait for that, so we didn't go for this solution. And also, apart from this customization, we cannot have all the services that Microsoft Graph is offering. So if I remember properly, in the time when I was checking this, that it was something in spring, they had some activities for Outlook, some activities for Excel, but not all of them. And they had some limitations. The biggest limitation that we encountered that time, I don't know if it is still an issue in there, is that we couldn't move emails from any folder, let's say an inbox in Outlook, from inbox to subfolder. So we were attempting to move it to a folder and it was working, but trying to move it to a subfolder wasn't working. I tried as well to get some support on that, and at that time I didn't get it, but while investigating that, I found out that some users were successful doing that. So I think it might be something in the configuration of Outlook, or how Outlook is set up from IT, something like this. So it might be, if you are interested, I recommend to go this way the first, because it is out of the box and it is ready for you. So it is the easiest. But our solution is not that. So our solution is that we are doing almost everything by ourselves. So let's say there is this path of going through the library that UiPath is offering, and there is the alternative solution that it is going through API calls the same way we will do API calls for any other software. So the positive part of that is that it is very customizable. So you can do actually the activity that you need in particular. So in case you want to move an email from the inbox to a subfolder, you just move it. You can just create your activity and it will be done for that. You can make sure that you can move it to a subfolder. The biggest benefit of this is that we don't need to wait for UiPath to create new activities in the library, so we can have access to the whole catalog of services of Microsoft Graph. Everything that is accessible for us in Microsoft Graph, we can call it from this UiPath API request. But the problem is that it requires our own development time. So of course, once it is created, it is just maintenance time. So very often it is no more time anymore, because normally we will not change an activity that we created for moving an email from inbox to subfolder, something like this. But still, we need to create it, and then if something changes or something goes wrong, we need to maintain it ourselves, because in the activities that the UiPath is providing for us, they are maintaining themselves. Anyway, there is a third way, actually, that it is our way of doing it at the moment, that it is a combination of both. So if you see in the previous, we are using the library itself to get a valid token or to register, let's say, in the Microsoft Graph application, this activity, Microsoft Office 365 scope. With this, passing certain criteria that I will explain later on, we can get a valid token, and with this token, this password that they are giving to us, we can trigger all the rest of the activities that are in Microsoft Graph for us. So because in the moment when we started to do this, we thought that this activity was working for us. We didn't want to reinvent the wheel again. So we are just reusing this activity to get a valid token. And then afterwards, with our own activities developed by us, we are calling the different services of Microsoft Graph. So this is our approach at the moment. And yeah, so there are a few things on how to set it up in case you are curious to know. First of all, I will contact some Azure administrator in the company where you are working, or your client's company, because they are the ones who should advise you how to do it. But anyway, sometimes it might be that it is new even for Azure administrators, that they are not very familiar with Microsoft Graph. So I am explaining in this slide which setup we are get in. So the first thing that your Azure administrator will ask for is which permissions do you want to get. So in our case, to deal with Outlook, we are having this kind of permissions. I think some of them are a bit redundant or some of them are a bit extra, like files read, etc. But because we wanted to get attachments as well, we incorporated everything. So we are sure that everything is working. And apart from that, it will also ask which kind of access do you want. So there are two kinds of access. One is for application access and or delegated access. So I will recommend to go through delegated access so you can get access to accounts that are not yours directly. So it is not based on the application because the application makes reference to the application that the Azure administrator is creating. They will create a graph application, so-called, for you. So you don't want to have access to just this application, but you want to have a delegated access. So you can access other people's emails as well in case they accept it, of course. Anyway, I left below as well an interesting article in case you want to go through how to set it up. I think this was very useful for me when I was investigating this. And I think it provides quite an overview. It is a step-by-step article on how to do it. So in case your Azure administrator is a bit new to this, I think it is a reference for him as well on how to set it up. Yeah, so if you were noticing before in the screenshots that I was showing, there are few concepts and key or words that we need to know if we want to deal with this. While we are registering the Azure application, once we complete the process properly, we will get few codes that we later will use to make calls to the application. So one is the application ID, the second is the tenant ID, the third is the client ID, and some permission link as well, but this is a different topic. I will come back later to this. The main three of them, so these three, application ID, tenant ID, and client secret, needs to be provided by your Azure administrator. So at the end, when he completes all the steps in the article that I was showing before, this link that I was showing before, he will receive an application ID, all these three codes. So he needs to pass this to you, so you later on can set up your robot to be able to connect to Graph. Apart from that, you will need a user ID as well. So the user ID is quite unique and it depends on the user. So imagine that you want to access the shared mail folder, shared mailbox of a team. This mailbox has a user ID unique code, let's say. Everyone has. I have my own as well in Outlook. If you are working for several companies, you will have several as well. Anyway, you need the one where you want to get access. So in this case, or in our cases, it is normally the shared mailbox of a team. So this is, we need to obtain it a bit differently. So I will talk later a bit about this. And just commenting a bit on the permission link, the Azure administrator as well needs to provide you with a link where where the final user or the person owning the mailbox where you want to access needs to click and accept that he or this person is granting access to this application to access their inbox. So these things are mandatory to receive in order to make a graph work. Apart from that, I have a couple of tips just on more information. So there is the whole documentation of how are the capacities of Microsoft Graph. It is not thought, at the end of it, there are some examples. It is not thought to have some RPA references, but it has some .NET references, so probably you are aware. If not, just letting you know that normally the .NET references that they are showing in there are somehow valid for UiPath, so you can get an idea of how everything works checking the .NET references. And it is the first one, this Microsoft Graph Explorer. It is a very nice thing. I think if you are interested in this topic, I will recommend you, maybe not today because it is a bit late, but tomorrow I will open this in your browser at work, and you will see that the Explorer is able to see your emails directly, and it is a nice tool to perform certain basic operations. In this Graph Explorer, you will see your user ID as well that I was mentioning before. So in case you want to access a different inbox from a different person, this person, you need to make this person entering in this Explorer. You will see the user ID, so you can copy paste it and use it later on. And it is a very nice link. Anyway, if you are anyhow interested in this topic, I really recommend to go to this link because it is probably the one that is the most self-explanatory of the possibilities of Microsoft Graph in the mail possibilities, let's say, because as we were saying before, Microsoft Graph is much more bigger than mail possibilities, but if you are interested just in mail, as we are doing in this presentation, I recommend a lot to go there. If we have a bit of time, maybe I will go and I will show you how it looks. Anyway, apart from that, I wanted to share some ideas just that we are having at the moment on how we can explore this Microsoft Graph even more. So we are quite happy on how it is operating with Outlook, but we want to go a bit more deep. So Outlook for us, we have several bots in production working at the moment, and we are satisfied. All the clients are satisfied. Our clients are satisfied as well, so everyone is super happy. So next step is to go a bit further and explore new possibilities. All these are ideas that I didn't explore except of the SharePoint that I explored a bit. The first idea that I was having, because when I was preparing this PowerPoint, I saw that Graph just included Teams into their package, into their offering. So the first idea that I had, of course, in the moment that I saw Teams in there, is that we can do maybe some simple chatbots working through Teams and making API calls. It might be some interesting exploratory idea, let's say. The second one is, I think it is very common for RPA developers. At some point, they will encounter that they need to work with SharePoint. It is not a problem normally, but of course, if we can work with SharePoint through MS Graph instead of dealing with the interface of SharePoint, it will be much better, I will say. So I am exploring this at the moment. Also, the team is exploring this at the moment, so it is an interesting idea. And apart from that, there are some ideas that I was having in the past that I didn't get the time yet to go into there. If you are probably all of us are somehow UiPath developers, we know that there is a config file, of course, that it is an Excel file. So it might be an interesting idea that the config file, instead of being in a folder where if two people are working at the same time on the same file, it will not work. If we have it in OneDrive and the bot is accessing it through MS Graph, probably several people can be working on the config file and it will not work. It is not such an problem normally because the config file is not thought to be open constantly, only time to time. But there are other files that the bot is having open sometimes and where we will need to have access. So I am thinking of multiple bots working with an Excel file, for instance, that it is sometimes common that they are encountered a problem if they are coming at the same time to the same Excel file. So if we would have it in OneDrive and we will be accessing it through Graph, we will solve that problem and it will be better, I believe. So this is just some ideas that we are thinking for the next steps, but most of them are just either ideas or in a very early status. Yeah, and so far this is my presentation for today. If we have a few more time that I think we have, let me go quickly to show you how Graph or this Explorer works. I think it is very interesting to show you. Let me see if I can go there. It will take just a second. So if you try this at work tomorrow, most probably, because it is a bit late today, you will see that you come to something like this. Make sure that you are connected. So you need to be logged in this part, because normally it's a bit not intuitive, because normally login is in somewhere here. But if you are logging in here, you can start to work on these predefined API calls that they have for us in here. So there are a few of them. So in case we want to see my profile, we can see certain things. This is the user ID that I was mentioning before. So for me, in my Ective account in here, my user ID is this particular one, and this is useful in case we register an application under Ective. I will have to receive a link where I will accept this application to access my email, and then through this ID we can call the application to access my email. I think we can do it as well through the email directly, but I mean, I like IDs normally. And anyway, there are many other possibilities. If you see, there are some Excel capacities already prepared in here for you to explore. So there are plenty of things. They incorporated Teams recently, so I am very curious of these teams. So I think it will be my next step in the moment I get a bit of time, because I'm very curious of the capacities of these teams, what we can do in there for automatizing chats even. So it is interesting. And yeah, so this is all from my side. I don't know if it is interesting for you. I am especially curious to know if you are already working with Graph on your end and you have some advice to share, something like this, because as I was mentioning at the beginning, as Edward was mentioning before, we are here to share our experiences. So in case you have some experiences, please share with us as well, so we can all benefit from this community. Not sure if anybody has anything.
Yeah, thanks, Eduardo. I just recently, if I may, started working with Graph API, and I used the .NET SDK, so I didn't go through UiPath, but I created my own activities, and I used it for MS Teams. So it is working quite okay. So I use it for a really simple chatbot, just to get some inputs from other users. So just write them a message, or actually it creates a new channel, then adds the users to the channel, writes the message, and then reads the messages. But I found out sometimes it's still not really reliable, because it's still like beta version, and they just went to 1.0. So they are still working on Teams services. So it's still not really 100% working fine, and you cannot just chat one-to-one. You need to chat through channels, but it's working okay. So I think once they will improve the stability and make it a little bit more configurable, it will really be big help.
And I've seen that it is. Yeah, sorry.
You just wanted to also add that SharePoint, it has its own API. So I don't know if you're aware of those, but I also created some activities that work with SharePoint lists and SharePoint files, and the SharePoint APIs work really well. So not really sure if there is some added value using Graph.
Exactly, I agree with this a bit, because even if I remember correctly, UiPath has its own library for SharePoint that is already using the SharePoint API. So I think, I don't know if there might be some extra activity that is doing something extra, but at the moment, my experience with the UiPath libraries out of the box is good already. So I want to explore it to see if there are extra functionalities in there. But otherwise, I am happy as well with the SharePoint API activities. Thank you. And do you have any other experience apart from Teams and SharePoint with Graph, Jan?
Not really, because the environment in our company is a little bit cumbersome. So the authentication was really big issue, and to get the permissions, so it's really difficult. Yeah, to get the right permissions. So it's moving really slowly.
I think it might be an issue in many places. I believe the reason for that is that the Azure administrator or IT administrators, they are not very familiar with it yet. So it is not very popular knowledge, let's say, this Microsoft Graph, and I think they are still not very happy with it.
And they are really worried that something will just go wrong. So not that easy to get the right permissions. And we still don't have only delegated, so to get app permissions, it seems to be really impossible. So we can have only delegated, so for specific user, and even that
we have delegated as well. And it is working fine for us. We are happy with it.
Yeah, but with app, you can do much more because it's really not limited by the user's permission. Pretty much unlimited power.
Yep.
Interesting thing to mention here is like how Power Automate comes in the game, because like IT is quite concerned about the giving access to Graph API, but most of the things it is pre-built integrations in Power Automate, but even with this basic parameters, you can already overcome some IT policies which were there for a longer time. For example, a forwarding email can be forbidden on the by company policies, but if you go through Power Automate, it just works, and many things like that. So surprisingly, IT has a concerns about Graph API, but I heard very few IT representatives yet speaking about Power Automate, which is now enabled on majority of Office accounts who use Office 365. So this is I expect the new wave of discussions to come around this topic.
Yeah, in our company, it is also an issue, Power Automate, so they are pretty aware about everything.
Yeah, good. But then it means that you have a good IT, whatever it means. But again, for company security, I think it's still quite good.
I disagree with this, Eduardo. Good idea. Security is good, but also providing services so we can do business is good. Because otherwise, if we close the company as well, the security will be super high.
Yeah. The other one thing I wanted to ask you also is I doubt that we will. I not like doubt, but I am sure that we will not publish the video tomorrow. Most probably it will be Friday or weekend-ish. But the links you were showing, maybe it is worth dropping here in the chat. So those users who want to take them together with them for tomorrow, like you can just copy and paste it in some notepad or something like that. Of course, later we will share it also in the in this event channel, but just maybe you prefer to have it earlier. And then again, the more or less similar questions would be if there are any questions to Eduardo or any questions to the previous topic we had, also to myself, or just whatever to share. Yeah, I would be also curious to learn how would you make this, a community better, or what would help you maybe more engage, or whatever. Yeah, like we are learning together with you. So I don't position us as experts or anything. We just love what we are doing. We're happy to share. We are happy to be in touch. If we will be later allowed to do offline events, we are happy to meet you in person. But I'm sure we can learn a lot from you as well. So if you let us know how this event can go better, or like similar events can be better, like we would appreciate it as well. So any comments or anything is highly appreciated. And if you are, by any reasons, I don't say shy, but concerned to speak in the bigger round, if you have some topics you would like to discuss in a smaller round, feel free to reach out after the meeting via email, via LinkedIn, whatever channel you have. I would also, when sending follow-up, I will also leave some contacts on us. So feel free to get in touch. And again, the main goal is to somehow grow and learn together. Yeah. So other questions, feedbacks, comments, whatever, what you like to share before heading for probably a dinner.
Yeah, Edward, if I can just to come back to the citizen developers, and if you have some personal experience, like what happens if something goes wrong, like if there is some citizen developer and the code is really not robust, and for example, the robot types something else to the field that it should, like who takes the blame or who takes the responsibility for this? And because I'm really worried about this, because we are starting to think about just let the people develop their own robots. But this is my biggest concern, that if something goes wrong, the blame will come back to us, and to take the responsibility for all the people, it's really pretty difficult.
I understand that, and first of all, like you need to. That's why it is called citizen. That it is not a part of Center of Excellence. And first of all, Center of Excellence is not to be blamed by because of these things. You, as a Center of Excellence, can provide trainings of how to use, can provide enablements and everything. But let's take a similar sample in IT. IT installs for you SAP. IT installs for you all the infrastructure, but they don't take the responsibility on you manually typing things they're wrong, right? And same thing can happen if user types the things wrong manually. So in our case, we specifically highlight to the management whenever enabling the citizen developer, because with this there is a cost also involved, and then management needs to approve the cost. And I speak about the management of the team member who is to become the citizen developer, so some local management, and then you make them aware about all the responsibilities and all the consequences of wrong design of the bot. At the very beginning, we were also thinking if we are to, if Center of Excellence to be responsible, for example, for code review, and we come up to the conclusion that no, we are not going also to review all the codes, especially that there may be quite many later if you democratize this thing. But what we find quite interesting is that we are utilizing teams to build a community of citizen developers, and they start to exchange the knowledge there. So it is a little bit independent from Center of Excellence. And one of the first thing important to understand is that Center of Excellence has nothing to do with the outcome of their work, but may have something to do with enablement. So I see the role of Center of Excellence definitely to enable, definitely to explain how to use, maybe in some more complex cases, even consult a bit the citizen developer, again, if they have time and more on voluntary basis, but not like having it as a separate unit of Center of Excellence, claiming it's citizen developers, because then you rather go with decentralized approach, which was mentioned, or not decentralized, but this, I would say, combined or federated approach when you have one COE, which was Yaroslav describing, and when they face some challenge, there is a central team to which the decentralized units can actually reach out and address those problems. So I don't know exactly the answer, like who is responsible. I would say that users and who builds these robots, and it is exactly the same thing as you build a macro which is doing the wrong thing, or even if you do the work manually wrongly. So I would still see the responsibility with end user, but in the same time I see the responsibility of COE to enable users to use it. So to train them, to raise the awareness, to support in the model which Yaroslav was describing also, that you may help them with more challenging things. And this is what is happening for one of our customers, that we have few citizen developers, they have Studio X installed, and they live their own life. We don't more or less, we don't care how they develop their robots, etc. But once they have some challenges, we help them. But we in parallel already built this Teams community, because we had, of course, we started with one citizen developer, and then there were some challenges we were helping to solve, etc. But then when the second time the same challenges were faced by the second citizen developer, we were already addressing it to this first one. And then to don't have this forwarding, we created the Teams chat, and in Teams the community grows of the citizen developers, so they can actually exchange the knowledge between themselves. I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah.
And also maybe one thing on top of it, we also established, besides the Teams channel and so on, we also established the wiki page, which actually describes all some basic functionality, basic problems they can face, and how to solve them, how to avoid them, and so on. So some basic guidelines for average users, what to do when happens this and that.
Yeah, we call it learning log, and I'm curious, do you allow users to maintain it also? So can users themselves to contribute to this document? So this is live document which is growing, or it is once defined document?
Well, we were trying to put these abilities to end users, but for some reason they were not really contributing. Not sure if they were shy to do it on their own, so on. They were just sending us those ideas. What are they missing over there and so on. And I was still updating it. We were updating the wiki page continuously.
So you are the
so
owner.
it's still growing, yes.
Got it. Got it. But yeah, great. We have it as a learning file, and we try to shift the responsibility on the shoulders of the users to do it, exchange their document, etc. We define the layout, and then the only thing is that you always have those enthusiasts, and you need to find someone who would be responsible for populating of this thing. Yes, so not populating, but for checking the format. For example, if you drop just a simple idea there in some simple format, this enthusiast would later follow up and say, hey, can you provide a screenshot? Can you provide some code sample or something to keep the same format that it is useful on the end to community, but not just that there is some 1 or 2 sentences which only few people would understand. But yeah, this is a good point to mention as well for the wiki. Good. So we were speaking today about citizen developer, about the automation hub, about the building pipeline itself and raising the people awareness. We had a great presentation from Eduardo about the graph APIs. Is there any feedback, any questions? So like, I think that we sorted out most of the questions that you have. If there are still some, please ask. Otherwise, would appreciate if you drop a few words or in the chat, or also let us know like verbally feedback. And feedback consists of both. So what did you like? What you maybe wish to improve? I still want to remind that there are opportunities to present, to share the knowledge also. It is not only about us, again, it is subjective knowledge, and I believe that everyone here in this round would have something to share, to contribute to this channel. So yeah, let us know what can go better, and let us know also what did you like, so we keep it for the next time. Any feedback would be appreciated. Anyone? Otherwise, you can also drop it in the chat. Or later you can send it also in direct message, whatever you prefer. Good. Since we don't have volunteers, I would like to thank you for joining us today in a late evening. I hope that now you will enjoy your dinner and we didn't run it too late. We presented the schedule for the next events. We will be trying to communicate it more in advance. We would also get in touch with potential speakers. We will try to announce it earlier, and yeah, let's grow together. So, and as soon as there is a possibility to host offline events, at least we have some space here in Bratislava, up to 20-30 people. We can also find some additional space if needed. So let's do something together in 2021. In case we don't speak anymore this year, I wish you Merry Christmas and cool holidays and enjoy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you as well.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Bye.